industry. Please welcome to the stage Managing Director of Highways at Carillion, Duncan Elliott.
That was I must say, a great presentation, and thank you for that, Andrew. Andrew's from Washington. I'm from Wigan, Andrew. It's very similar places, I'm sure, and I suppose our accents reflect that as well. Can I just have a show of hands before we sort of get started? Can you put your hand up if you are leading a business in the highways sector in this country? Okay. And I have to say, I thought that would be the sort of response I'd get, and which is not very many. And I don't say that negatively, I say that quite constructively, because the point I'd just like to make is that it's really important that we go out of here, influence our leaders, for them to trigger change in their businesses across the sector and across the UK, for the good of us all. So I'm Duncan Elliott. I am the Managing Director of Carillion Strategic Highways. I'm afraid I'm not going to be around for questions after this, but what I will do is offer to meet, sit, talk to any leader in this sector on the back of this presentation to share our journey in more detail, and to help as much as I can on the back of what we've been through over the last few years. Up front, I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to thank you for coming in and giving me just a few minutes. But what I must emphasise is this is a snapshot of our journey, but it captures for me the real headlines and trigger points that changed my view and influenced significantly what we did as a team and as a business going forward. Just to get started, there are a few things in particular, and I have no slides, and that was a conscious decision, because what I'd really like you to do is to listen, please, really listen, please. I didn't expect a bigger picture of what you could see, actually, so I'm sorry about that as well. The things I'd like you to take away today for me, and these are the things that drive me, are an acceptance that this industry and this sector does need to change. I'd like you to go away and think about humility and establishing greater humility within yourselves and your teams. I'd like you to consider leadership and true leadership of the equality, diversity and inclusion agenda, again, in this industry, which is all about walking the talk. I'd also like you to think about human kindness at its best, to help and support each other do what really, deep down, I think we all want to do. And good old-fashioned honesty as well, because from my perspective, I think this industry lacks a bit of that. It's important for me, again, because I went through this a few years ago, that, again, the EDI agenda, that we do get it and understand it. And from a personal point of view, I didn't, and I'm still learning, but the penny needs to drop at some point. So it's really important, again, for me, for this industry, yourselves and our leaders, that we go out of here, understand it better, and get it, and look to make a difference going forward. So just to take a few minutes to talk through our journey, again, and that of the Carillion Strategic Highways team over the last 3 years, and certainly how proud I am of that team and what we have achieved. it is important that you know that I am not an expert by a long shot around EDI, but I am passionate, and I have a very passionate team that has started a journey that it definitely believes in and is starting to make a difference going forward. I believe strongly that the industry does need to change. I believe strongly that that change is actually long overdue, and that change needs to take place now. We're not safe enough, we're not smart enough, and we are not efficient enough. And again, in simple terms, in my little world, the construction industry in the UK last year killed 30 people. Is that really, really acceptable? But what about me? And I'll come on to my journey in a second. And I felt, and this is a bit personal to me, but I did feel it was important that you knew a bit about me, for those that don't know me, and how I think, where I come from, and a bit about my life. I'm not a lecturer. I'm not a dictator. I am just a human being like everybody else sat in this room. But who am I and what do I do? Well, I've been very lucky to spend 33 years with my wife. We celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary this year. She's great for me. I'm not sure she'd say the same if she was in this room, actually. We have two lovely daughters, and I became a grandfather 3 or 4 months ago now to our first grandson. I breed pedigree sheep. I carriage drive round the country lanes of the Yorkshire Dales on a weekly basis as my hobby, and also breed Labrador Retriever dogs, some of which we've sold into royalty to the Queen's head gamekeeper at Windsor Park. Which all sounds really rosy and all very nice and all wonderful and all that good stuff. And it is, and it's great. And it keeps us really, really busy. And I think really importantly for me, it allows me to switch off from the day-to-day grind that comes with, what we do, in this industry and the hard work we give to it. But it's not all great, and there is some sad stuff in there too, I'm afraid. 18 years ago, a very, very close friend of ours took their own life. He left his wife and 4 children. The children were aged at the time. One was a baby, and the other 3 up to the age of about 8 years old. And the second eldest daughter actually was the same age as my eldest daughter at the time, and they've stayed best friends ever since. 10 years ago, my sister became a KSI statistic, as we call it today, killed and seriously injured. She was killed in a traffic accident, left her husband and son and family, which was devastating for us. 9 years ago, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And I don't say that, I'm not looking for any awes and oh, that's a shame, and any sympathy, to be quite honest, because that is quite some time ago now. But a little bit closer to home, this year, probably back in, I think it was probably January time, February time, the second eldest daughter of Paul, who took his own life, came to me and asked me if I'd take her to church on the day that she got married, because how we treated her and been with her for the 18 years that had passed since she lost her own father, which for me is quite rewarding, to say the least, very humbling, and was an absolute pleasure to do. And you might be sat there thinking, what the hell is this bloke on about now? But for me, I did feel when I was preparing this speech that it was important to share that with you, because these are things to me that have helped me in a really significant way get to where I am today, and certainly help me understand better and shape the way I think and contribute and feed our business as a way forward in the context of equality, diversity and inclusion. That said, so what's the point? Why bother? Again, I'm glad some of the presentations we've had so far have actually touched on this. But what is the point? As well as it being the right thing to do, I must say, I never expected being dressed up like Beyonce today with this thing falling off my ear, so apologies again for that. I think what we're doing, and what I'll talk through in a minute, will contribute significantly to quite a few of the points that Phil raised earlier in his presentation in the context of capacity and capability. I think it will improve our industry and performance within our industry significantly by using a broader base of people with different backgrounds and skill sets. And Andrew, in fairness, really said what I wanted to say, and that the actual evidence that EDI brings in terms of improving performance is already out there. It's a no-brainer. I think it will raise morale within our teams. I think it will reduce employee turnover and create even greater places for us to work within. It will improve employee engagement, and we all know, I think, what good engagement with our teams gives to us, our businesses and our industry. It will create greater creativity and innovation and establish more sustainable businesses for all of us. So that's what this is about for me. That's what this will give us. That's why it's worth bothering. So what have we done? What have Carillion done? Again, this isn't chapter and verse. These are just headlines, again, and points that stick in my mind that have certainly helped me and the team understand what we've needed to do. It is important as well, when I say this, that certainly from our perspective, we still see ourselves right at the start of this journey. We don't, by a long way, think that we've cracked it and got there, got the badge, move on, let's think about something else. We still see ourselves right at the start of it. The point for mentioning that is that if you're not in this space and haven't started doing something, I personally think you need to really quickly, and actually it's probably a little bit overdue. Again, because this journey I'm just going to headline for you now is coming on 3 years old. So in 2014, within the world of Highways England, some will know that really well, we go through what is called a strategic alignment assessment to see how well businesses are aligned with Highways England. That was the second assessment that's taken place over recent years. And one of the subjects is equality, diversity, inclusion, and we didn't score particularly well. And at the end of 2014, that was the real catalyst for me personally to look at myself, look at our business, and look at what we were going to do differently going forward. But in all honesty, the only thing on my mind at that point in time was a better score. I just wanted a better score. I wasn't really that bothered about what came with it as long as we got a better score. I'll jump forward to the point where what I would say is I'm not interested what the score is anymore, because what we do, what we're about, how we're going about our business has changed so differently that I'm more proud of that and what we're achieving as a result of it. The score will just be whatever it will be. We met at the time lots of people. We sought a lot of help. We tried to train ourselves, myself, inform ourselves, myself. And there were a couple of people in particular that I think really did help us. One of those people is Nicky Ensert from Highways England. I don't know if Nicky is in the room at all anywhere. But Nicky's in the room there, so she's sat at the back. I can remember sitting in the Cube in Birmingham with Nicky and with Alison Holloway at the time. And we were looking at capacity capability. We were looking at EDI. And I have to say, I was ever so proud to be able to go along to Nicky, sit in the kitchen, and I could even take you to the same table that we sat at to this day, and tell Nicky how great it was that we were out in Portugal, we were out in Greece, we were out in Australia recruiting resources into our business and into this country. You know, how fantastic is that? And Nicky said to me, and I'm sure Nicky won't mind me saying, but Nicky said to me, "Is that the best you can do?" And that, you know, almost 3 years on, stuck with me in a big way. And Nicky was absolutely right to put that challenge to me. And it helped me think much, much deeper than I'd ever thought before. We then engaged some help from the National Centre for Diversity, and a particular individual, Bruce Waller. And what that did for us is it created a framework, it created a structure to our way forward. It helped us shape our thinking, it helped us create plans and capture, it informed us, it educated us, and allowed us just to map what the next 12 months was going to look like. And that was a critical step in our journey too. Quite a few of the next steps, again, from a personal point of view, were informing and educating me. Statistics played a big part for me. Again, in the context of equality, diversity, inclusion and fairness. And if you've not looked at the statistics, please go and look, because they are quite horrifying. And when I saw these for the first time, yes, I was quite shocked, I had to say, but the statistics I looked at were statistics that were pulled together from across the world. So, you know, that's fine, you know, worldwide statistics, happy days, move on, doesn't directly relate to us. The next set of statistics I saw were statistics relating to the UK that were actually very similar, which is a little bit worrying, but again, it was UK industry generally, not construction, definitely not highways. So was I particularly concerned about that? Not really. The next set of statistics related to construction, and the next set of statistics related to my team. And what I found was that actually the trends that exist in the context of EDI and fairness are very similar trends right across the world and even within our own teams and my team, and I'm pretty sure your teams too. And it's important we know that and do something about that. And again, quite shocking to see and believe it and realise that actually your team feel this way and see this. On the back of that, we did lots more surveys. We did lots of engagement with our teams to try and help them, far broader than what we're doing in a small group. We engaged with our supply chain. We helped our supply chain better understand this subject and the journey that we felt the industry needed to go on. We did lots of interviews with the staff. We did assessments of our workplaces and where we're expecting people to work. What a lot of that did for me, again, personally, was lead me down the inclusion avenue. Again, for me to think about actually how inclusive is the construction industry in the UK, how inclusive is the highways sector in this country, you know, how inclusive are we as an employer. And again, for me, the reality is that the construction industry in this country isn't particularly inclusive. You know, and I say that in the broadest sense. And I think that, you know, we need to change that to become more attractive, to address some of the issues that we touched on earlier, because otherwise people will not look at us as a genuine opportunity, as an employer and an industry they want to join. We undertook job shadowing, so we looked at our teams, we looked at how we were structured, and we looked at what people actually did do on a day-to-day basis. You know, we didn't assume, we actually shadowed people, and again, this is where the National Centre for Diversity helped us. And what we found out on the back of that shadowing was that 50% of what people do in our business, in my team, is non-technical work. The other 50% is. The other 50% is all about getting the round peg in the round hole, but 50% isn't. Yet we still employ technical people to do that non-technical work for us. How mad is that? So we've started to change our role profiles. We've started to restructure our teams to reflect that. And what we've seen, where we've implemented that already, is that, you know, when you do get the right person with the right background, with the right skill set, to do what they are really good at, the outcome is quite breathtaking. And we've got hard evidence of that. We've seen that with our own eyes. And all that does to us is just fuel us to do even more going forward. And I have to say, it is genuinely very refreshing when you get into that sort of space. On the back of that, in 2016, we achieved Investors in Diversity accreditation, which was fantastic for us. In March of this year, we achieved Leaders in Diversity accreditation, which was just out of this world, and an amazing, you know, as a team for us to have achieved that. And also earlier this year, we became Diversity Champions of the Year from the Construction News Awards, with some, I have to say, some fairly stiff competition and a challenging set of judges that reviewed those submissions. But actually, more importantly, from my point of view, you know, I am and we are proud of what we have achieved, and we are starting to make a difference. Just to bring things to a close, again, for me, I'd just like to make a point of a special thank you to my team. Some are here today, but the wider team have been a critical part to this. I'd like to say thank you to Nikki Ensert, again specifically because she helped us in a big way, to Bruce Waller from the National Centre for Diversity, to Alison Holloway, again, who's been a real support for me within Carillion, and members of the Carillion Strategic Highways Steering Group for EDI that I chair, for all their support, all their direction and hard work that's allowed us to get to where we have done. I'll come back to where I started now. Please go away. Accept that our industry needs to change. Instill greater humility within yourselves and your teams. Establish true leadership of the EDI agenda. Create human kindness at its best, like you've never seen before, to support and help each other, and ensure that we have good old-fashioned honesty. Make sure you get it, understand it, and go and make a difference. Appreciate your time. Thank you for listening. Apologies if I've bored you, but hopefully, if there's one or two nuggets that have come out that'll help, then I'll be happy.
Duncan, thank you so much for that. Thanks for being so open and frank. And it's not an easy thing to do in such a public space, but important, I think.